you know, we think we give up, but we don't give up because we are infinite, eternal, ever-evolving beings. And all the mystics, all the spiritual masters know that we're all going to that place where we remember our oneness with God. Heaven, as you mentioned so beautifully, Bobby. We're all going to that place. So we may think we're going to give up, but we don't give up. So it takes some of us longer than others. So if we make that decision, we're not going to give up on this awakening and this remembering who we are. So today is about the expansiveness of faith. And Kirk shared a quote with me, actually this morning, which I thought was really cool. He said, faith is not a leap into the dark. You've been there, you know, the leap into the dark. It's a step into the light. Do you like it? We thank Kirk for that. Well, he didn't create it, I don't think, but he shared it, and that's good. So today I'm just going to invite us to take a bigger step. Does that work? Because I know there's faith in each and every one of us here, because there's not a person here that has not had a tragedy, a loss, a diagnosis that has scared you a lot. That you had to have that big faith in order to get you here today. And I know it's community that keeps us going too. And as Reverend Penny was saying, when we forget, it's the community that helps us. So I was thinking about being spiritual beings, which is what we really focus on here, welcoming all paths, and we're spiritual beings here together. So I looked up, well, what does spirituality mean? And I love this definition. It said it is a process of reformation, aiming to recover the original shape of man and woman in the image and likeness of God. Wow. Reshaping in the image and likeness of God, where we remember that we are one. So what came to me is we really have to do some unlearning to get back to that place. We have to unlearn some of the old habits, beliefs, and opinions we've had to remember who we are. Khalil Gibran said we choose our joys and sorrows long before we experience them. And it really is in direct relationship to the size of our faith. And for me, getting back to that place where we remember that God and I are one. God is all there is, and I know you and I are part of that beautiful energy. That there's three things we need to do to really expand and be in the realm of honoring and recognizing and growing our faith. And the first thing for me is to know there's a power greater than we are for us to use. There's a power greater than we are. We're part of this great energy that we call God, Spirit, creative intelligence, infinite potential, whatever you call it. It's a vibrational energy of which we are a part. But it's greater than we are for us to use, and it's something we evolve into. And second, is there's a part of each and every one of us, since we are evolutionary beings, that is not yet expressed or realized. Would you agree with that? There's part of us still, inside of us, a divinity that's waiting to shine even brighter, that we haven't yet expressed, and that's why we're here. And that's why we're together on this journey. Because this spirituality is about personal transformation. That we're on a path. We're on a path of experience because we learn through experience, a path of self-discovery. A path to return to that place that we call the kingdom of God, the place within that we know our oneness. And last but not least, is that we recognize and know it's only by expansion that we evolve, which means we got to let go of some stuff. We got to let go of the things that keep us small and limited. We need to have big faith. Remember to step into the light, to be drawn into what is right and good for us. And I know, as I said, that there's faith that has brought everyone here today. Where in your life have you experienced big faith that allowed you to move something through something that seemed much bigger than you, much scarier? I remembered a time that really called big faith for me. But I want to tell you something. When we live in big faith, there's always messages. There's always an infinite, eternal voice, whether it comes from within or from someone else giving the message. There's someone there confirming that we're on the right path, something. So my big faith came when it was after we had lost our daughter Tara, and her younger sister Deanna was having a really rough time, just a rough time. She'd been such an amazing student and just wasn't finding the meaning in life that was there. She couldn't make sense of it. When your worst fear happens, it's hard to get yourself back going. So about a year after Tara's passing, I sat Deanna down. I said, look, sweetie, tell me, what can I do? How can I help? What's going on? Help me here. She said, Mom, I'm so scared that you're going to hold on so tight to me that you'll never let me go. And she was right. So I made a deal. I said, Dee, listen, how about if you don't give me anything to worry about? Well, she is a teenager. I said, let me correct that one. Almost nothing to worry about. We won't take those couple of incidents there. If you give, if you really, I see that you are a conscious, capable young woman, that the door is open. The door's open. She did pretty good. Teenager, but good enough for me when she went off to college because she was hoping for something new and things didn't work out. She said, one trimester of college, she was miserable. This is just like high school, but everybody's free. And she goes, I can't be here anymore. And I said, okay, well, you'll find something. And she did. She decided she was going to Africa by herself. Well, you've got to understand, Kirk and I were not international travelers. Africa by yourself. She found a program where she could go study the cheetahs at the International Cheetah Conservation Fund. And there were 6 other students going, older than she was, not from Laguna Hills where we lived, not from California, not even all from the United States. 6 of them in the northern hemisphere. And they were going to meet in Johannesburg. Actually, no, she was flying into Johannesburg and then to Cape Town. They were meeting in Cape Town. It's like, okay, this is a stretch of my faith. So we stood there at LAX as she was getting onto the plane. Tears streaming down all of our faces. I mean, because we weren't going to talk to her for 3 weeks, because not only was she going to Africa, she was going to go through the bush for 3 weeks. So there was no communication whatsoever. So, I'm glad I didn't know about black mambas then. I learned about them later. But anyway, which is the deadliest snake in the bush there. But so we stood there, and I was like, okay, we're saying our goodbye. And then flight attendant comes and says, miss, your bag is too big. You can't carry it on. I'm going to take it. And here we are. And she turns and says, wait a minute. You're not taking my bag until you give me a claim ticket or a way I get it back when I get off this plane. I said, thank you, God. She's going to be okay. She's going to be okay. So life speaks to us when we have the courage to speak to it. There's a difference. What this expansive faith is not having faith in God. It's not those times where we we dial. It's like the dial up to God. When we need God, we sit down and we call, help me, help me. It's the faith of God. When we're in the place when we can know that life is eternally unfolding for our good. And so that's the kind of faith that I'm talking about. But sometimes we don't have that faith. Would you agree with me? Yes. We bounce back and forth between doubt and faith. That's part of the human experience. I know when Jesus talked to his disciples, he would often say, "Oh, ye of little faith," because even disciples, teachers, students that we all are, we bounce back and forth between that faith and doubt. But Mark Nepo, who's one of the great spiritual teachers for me of the time, my 21st century roomie, kind of a mystic and a poet and a teacher and a cancer survivor and a spiritual guide. In his recent book, The Endless Practice, one of his chapters is called, now this might test your faith a little bit, so just give yourself, see where you are on the barometer here. What's in the way? What's ever blocking us from our full expression of life, from living in joy and happiness? What's ever in the way is the way. How are you doing with that one? If we believe that we are here, our souls on a journey of experience, and we live in a friendly, cooperative universe that's working for our good, how could that not be so? Well, I'll tell you how it cannot be so. It is so, but I'll tell you why we think it's not so. Because instead of using our divine mind, we're using our human, judging, logical mind that looks at something and says, well, I don't want that, so it can't be right. Oh, come on. You've been there. If it's not what we want, then it can't be right. And then what do? We start struggling and fighting with life. We start struggling and fighting with the experience, instead of being willing to surrender and learn what it's here to teach us. Do you know what I mean? Do you get it? Do you ever struggle or fight or argue or try to make things different? Okay, and it's not about making things different, because we're here, that Reformation that I talked about, spirituality, Reformation is taking away, removing things that no longer work, faulty systems. Get it? Faulty systems. So there's another chapter in a different chapter of a different book of Mark Nepo's. I think it's so interesting, it's all. And he says here, when we stop struggling, we float. And he talks about when he was learning to swim. And he said he was afraid of the deep. He was afraid of the deep. And he said, reassuring voices were calling to him, Mark, you can do it, you can swim. He said, I'm afraid of the deep. And he started struggling and straining to keep his chin above water until he was exhausted. And he said, what happened is in that exhaustion, he let go. He let go. And his head went underwater, but it was only then that he could feel the cradle of the deep supporting and lifting him. The cradle of the deep, the power and presence of the deep. And he said we all get to those points where we think something is above our head, bigger than we are, and that we're sinking. Are any of you there right now? I know some people are. There's big things going on right now. And we think that because it's bigger than we know how to solve, that we have to struggle to make it happen. And we get again in that battle between faith and doubt. And so what Mark Nepo says he does is when he hits that place where, oh my gosh, this is bigger than I am, he remembers what it means to float. When we stop struggling, we float. When we let go and let God support and help us and co-create, we float. But some of us have a little bit of a hard time floating, right? Because it's just hard for us. So let me share what Abraham Herschel, a 20th century rabbi, American rabbi, said. Faith is not an assurance, and I'm going to put a little addendum, an assurance that we get everything we want, or everything works out the way we think it should. Faith is a constant effort and a constant listening to the eternal voice. If we don't listen, fear is going to run our lives. I know that. If we don't listen, fear will run our lives. So it's about listening and remembering. But in order to develop that, as I said, we choose our joys and sorrows long before we experience them. Because what Ernest Holmes terms that in a little different way. He said, we measure out exactly the portion of life we're willing to experience. Would you agree with that? We decide how much life we're willing to have, or how much life we deserve to have. He said, some of us measure our life out in eyedropper measures, some in spoons, and some in bucketfuls. And sometimes people have eyedropper measurements for, well, this is how much love I deserve. But boy, I'll have this much in how much vacation I deserve. You know, or this how much, I'll have a bucket full of money, but this much health, or this. He said some have eyedropper, but some bucket. Some have only eyedropper because they only feel they deserve so much good. And he asked the question that I want to pose to you right now. Why don't we live life with a bigger container in all areas? Now, remember, the container isn't made of physical stuff. Our container is made of faith. So we look at that and we go, okay, I want a bigger container. How many of you want a bigger container? Measuring out all the stuff, more understanding, more goodness, more cooperation, more connectivity, absolutely. But how do I get more faith? Well, it's not new. Jesus taught over 2,000 years ago 2 commandments when he was asked, what is the greatest commandment? He said there are 2. The first one is to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And he went on to say, and the other is like unto it. Love your neighbor as yourself. He said all commandments and prophets hang on those 2 commandments. All life is about that. Love God, love yourself, love your neighbor. It's about love. Love and faith go hand in hand. So let's look at this commandment, he said, the first greatest commandment. When he said, love God with all your heart. Heart in Greek is cardio. Cardio meaning the physical aliveness, the physical love, the fullness of being alive here as a human. Love God with all your physical being, your passion for life. And then he said, love God with all your soul. And soul in Greek, the word is psyche, which means the connectivity to humankind, to our brothers and sisters, the connection. So we have passionate love, the eros love. We have brotherly love, the philia love. And then he said, and love God with all your mind. But mind in Greek is nous, which is not the mind of the logic and the reason, it's the mind of the understanding and the awareness of oneness. So if we're willing to be fully invested, to have an active faith, that's active. It's calling all parts of ourselves to be engaged, not the occasional dial-up faith. This is calling for a bigger kind of faith. It's calling for a cell tower of faith, where we're blasting out our faith all the time. We don't live in that era anymore, that we can just be part-time faithful people. We live in a world, well, think about it. We've got the cloud. Everything is known at all times that we don't even know about yet. It's all there. And we need to live up to that. We need to move beyond the faith in God at the time we need it, to be the radiating faith of God. And what that's going to require? It's going to require a different way to be in the world. We cannot be here just by ourselves. It's a bigger expression. Paul Tillich, a Protestant theologian, he wrote something really wonderful about faith that really excited me. It made me feel fully alive. And I can always tell, either when I get the God bumps or the little spring of tears in my eyes, that it really means something to me. Deep. It's that deep that sometimes we get afraid of, but it's there to propel us, to cradle us and move us forward. He said, he spoke of faith as an act of ultimate concern, ultimate caring. I want you to just be with that for a minute. Faith is the act of ultimate caring, where we can move beyond our own little opinions, our old habits and beliefs, where we can be there. And he said, it is the unshakable way. Oh, faith is not the conclusion we adhere to, not the way we want it necessarily, but the unshakable way we give our ultimate concern to whatever is before us. That we can really be present and listen. Not share our view, our opinion that our way is right, but to be there with ultimate concern that we're in this together. This isn't about separation. When we feel separate from the whole, it's impossible to have big faith. He's talking about the faith that develops compassion, about the faith that develops confidence in who we are, so we're not challenged when we see something different. We're there. And we want to hear and to be part of that. And the thread that connects us all is listening. That's what the thread is. And I want you to hear this last little quote. Our challenge is to surrender to the life we've been given. He stated that. Our challenge is to surrender to the life we've been given. Because in some way, we definitely chose this. It's here for us. It's the experience that's helping us grow and have more faith. But that's our challenge, to surrender to. And then he goes on to say, hard as it is, magnificent as it is, overwhelming as it is. And I don't know, again, where the pendulum is, hard, magnificent, overwhelming, or if it's going like this. But it's what we all experience. It's not some of us. All of us. In different levels and different measures. No matter how hard, magnificent, or overwhelming it is, faith is asking us to befriend life itself. To recognize that life is our friend. It's not against us, it's for us. We are asked to stir the angel that is deep within each and every one of us. To awaken the angel. The guide, the love that's there in all of us. It's not there in some of us, it's in everyone. Some of us are just listening a little better. It takes some of us longer to open to that goodness that's there. He says, we are asked to stir the angel that sleeps within us until it uses our hands as a soul to work on earth. For as blood needs veins to do its work, love needs us. It seems to me that love and faith are interchangeable. We don't have to pray for more faith. We're made of faith. We have to develop it and practice it and trust it and be willing to feel the cradle of the deep. We don't have to pray for love. We're made of love. We have to develop it and practice it and use it. There is a professor in London. He has a last name I probably shouldn't pronounce. Roman Krishnarik. Sounds good, doesn't it? Krishnarik. He's a consultant to the UN. Times they're changing. He is a teacher of social change, but he doesn't teach changing laws and policies. He believes that empathy and conversation are the way of change in the world. He believes that listening, the ultimate concern, listening, is the way we change life. So for you and me right now, I'm going to invite us to stand on our present container of faith and stretch it out with the light of our being. To stretch it out and open it up. To have more faith. Because if we have more faith, it's going to equal that we have more connection. We listen more deeply. We have more understanding and compassion and empathy and joy for ourselves and others. So I'm going to put up an affirmation. And it came from Ernest Holmes' New Design for Living. And for me, faith is all about moving ourselves into right relationship with God first, with others, with ourselves and with others. And this is except for my faith expands, I added that. These are words from Ernest Holmes from A New Design for Living. And I want you to feel them first, so I'm going to read them to you. And then I want to read them together. And then we'll go into prayer to activate that faith of stepping into the light, a bigger expression here. I believe. I accept. I know there is a power greater than I am. I know it is right where I am. I know it is working for me, as me, and through me. My faith expands. Well, I could have just read that, and you could have had 20 minutes off.
You're better.
More entertaining than this, but so I want to just look at this, and it's all about a commitment between you and God. So let's read it together. I believe, I accept, I know there is a power greater than I am. I know it is right where I am. I know it is working for me, as me, and through me. My faith expands. And on that note, will you simply close your eyes and join me? Join me as you unravel yourself and open yourself up to this greater good that is ever present. As you choose in this moment to have a greater measure for your life, because you're worth it. It's when we know right here and now that we are made in the image and likeness of love, of prosperity, of health, of goodness and joy, that we are made in the image and likeness of God. It is when we know that and claim that. And when we have faith, as Jesus said, the faith just the size of a mustard seed, knowing that a mustard seed grows, yes, to a plant. A plant might be 20 feet by 20 feet, but the mustard seed, the thing it has that we need is it's tolerant. It's tolerant of the drought. It's tolerant of difficult conditions. It can grow almost anywhere. And so when we have a faith that is tolerant of whatever situation we may be in, it's tolerant because it trusts and knows that there's a power for good at work in our life always, not part-time, but forever and ever and ever. We can expand that container to accept our life, to surrender to the life we have because it's the one that's made for us and by us. It's the one we have because it is us. And as we stop fighting against it and allow it to stop struggling, and we allow it to cradle us, to lift us, and let us float to a greater understanding a greater passion, a greater connectivity with life, when we allow that faith, when we stir and awaken that angel within to be the hands of love that works through us, as us, here and now. It's when we remember truly who we are and why we are here. Right here in this moment, I'm simply going to invite you not to take a leap of faith into the darkness, but to let that faith be a step and a bigger step into the light of oneness, unity. In this moment, I simply invite each and every one of us to let God be God as us. And so it is.